So there are two parts to it. One is in terms of, how is AI likely to impact talent? So what is it that we expect from people going forward, considering all the stuff that is happening around and the kind of impact AI is creating, where AI is becoming a huge enabler to doing work, and certain aspects which were considered unique and very specialized skills and people were paid for doing work like that is being done by AI in a jiffy, right? As an example, video editing, creating reels, or making, editing images, anything to do with graphic design and stuff like that is all being done by AI in minutes. You actually don't need any human intervention to do it, as long as you know which tool to use. So what impact is likely to have on talent, A, and then how is it going to impact careers? I mean, how do people need to think about their careers going forward? I mean, there's this huge conversation going on that, oh, AI is come, jobs are going to get lost, people are going to lose jobs. Is it that people are going to lose jobs, or people have to acquire certain new skills to be relevant, and the jobs are going to change? The roles going to completely change in terms of how they need to be done. So these are all broad questions and conversations that are out there. Some are causing panic, some are causing anxiety, others are causing encouragement and excitement in people saying, the possibilities are immense in terms of what one can do. Yeah. So keeping that in mind, probably start with the first question in terms of when you're actually looking at talent. How are you looking at talent when you're hiring talent and then staffing them into roles? Whether it is in industrial places like what Rupankar is working, the kind of companies you're working on, or in banks, Carmistha, that you've done, or in startups. How are we looking at talent? And what skills are we looking at in them, and how are we deciding where to staff them? Yeah. Has there been any change from the traditional classical approach of competency based hiring and pure skill based hiring, or is there something else that is out there? Yeah. Anybody can go first. And if somebody wants to go next, you can raise your hand, and then probably I'll just prompt you and you can answer the question.
Actually, I don't mind going first on this bit and everything. So, and specifically from a startup perspective, and I'm only going to be kind of focusing on that bit first. There's not really much change that's changed for us from a talent perspective, right? Because again, AI being at such nascent stages right now, right? It doesn't have a very huge impact right now, and especially when it comes to startups. When you're experimenting so much, right, you have to kind of build things from scratch, right? There's still a lot of manual intervention that's required, right? Also, on the other part, I have also realized that, AI's limitation right now is that you have to be very specific with the prompts also that you're giving to the AI to kind of actually giving you a closer response to what you're looking at. It's still not 100%. You still have to read through it, even if it's giving you paragraphs of details, right? You still have to make sure to read through it. If it's relevant to what you were looking at, if it's relevant information, evaluate if it fits to what you were wanting it to evaluate for you, right? And then actually utilize that. So there is still time that's going into that, right? Because AI, I don't think there's any tool yet that's as evolved, right, that can actually do 100% role right now. Yes, and I believe it's actually going to take 5 years, not even 2 to 3 years, basically 5 years for any AI tool to evolve to a stage, because it's so customizable, right? When it comes to industry, when it comes to stage scale of the organization, right? So that's my view from a talent perspective. So nothing really from talent has changed. Yes, it's an added on advantage if you know what prompt to give an AI so that your work can be quicker, but you still need to read through it. Like I said, I'm like, just be sure that it's actually making sense. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Aprajita. Interesting. So any other take on this?
Yeah, I would like to. So from a talent perspective, if you are talking specifically from the hiring perspective, AI has changed certain things. Like if you go with the ATS, the job what recruiter used to do, going through piles of profiles or maybe applicants, and then sorting out like who is like best close fit for the job description what you have designed. So on that front, we get a lot of support from the ATS that the screening happens and the maybe the workload what a recruiter used to feel if the applicants are more. That time you get shortlisted candidates at least at the recruiter level, so that recruiter can go beyond the skill sets which are matching with the JD, and then going forward and looking from a perspective that whether this person is going to be a fit into the culture or maybe the leadership style of the hiring manager, the stress which is going to be there for that particular position, what type of challenges they are facing in the current position where they are hiring. So those kind of things are getting sorted out by AI. But still, as Aprajita rightly said, that there is you cannot rely completely on that manual intervention or maybe that human tendency to find out, going and talking to the people, and then finally shortlisting that okay, this can be a set of people which I would like to forward. So that like you can use it as a combination, but 100% reliance on the ATS or AI, that will be still a debatable thing, what I can say.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is that a couple of years away is what you're saying, right? Elliot, do you have a different perspective?
I have a perspective, I think, that draws from our two colleagues that just shared their views. I think AI might seem immature today, but if we just reflect a little, we took about 150 years to go through the Industrial Revolution, 50 years to go from analog to digital computing, and maybe about 15 to go from AI to AGI, artificial general intelligence, potentially, right? So today, Gen AI is generic, but the most recent Gartner reports say that in 5 years from now, maybe less, more than 50% of the Gen AI models that we have that are generic today will be specific to either industry or function, right? From where we are, maybe about 5% today in 2024. I think the limitations at that point will be human resource scaling rather than AI. And I think paradoxically, the thrust of a lot of these AI models will be to solve for these human limitations. So I see that the human factor will be the bottleneck, really. At our company, Siemens Energy, what we use today is an external job library and catalog, right? That a lot of you also do. And what we're seeing is that this reflects the advances of relevant AI applications, their impact on work content, skills, and competencies more and more. I've been looking at the same catalog and I've seen titles change. I'm seeing work content change year over year. And what we're seeing is an increasing shift across jobs in the aggregate, both in terms of volume and complexity, to AI augmented tasks, right? So colleagues that are able to leverage two things in the attainment of their goals stand out. One, can they use AI tools like internally sandboxed Gen AI in stakeholder management, communications, external customer workflows? Two, can they use advanced data techniques, including those behind AI, like clustering and regression, to draw out and action insights, right? These are the colleagues that are beginning to get recognized for such projects. They lead more and more projects that are departmentally driven, like these ones. And naturally, they're also seen as being viable succession candidates. On the hiring front, job descriptions are increasingly requiring and evaluating such skills, mostly because the tool landscape itself is changing. And of course, process-wise, whether it's hiring, staffing, succession, we're seeing a lot more candidate personalization. So where AI tools themselves are deciding the best tone of voice, the engagement platform, and several other parameters in engagement and communications. So, all of this is happening, but of course I caveat all of that with the existing hallucination risk, which a lot of Gen AI models today have in particular. So, we'll solve for that over time, but this is how I feel the market is changing and how talent processes are changing.
Great. Thanks, Elliot. I think this is a very interesting take. So we'll talk a little bit more after we hear Carmistha and Rupankar's views. Carmistha?
So yeah, I think the hiring, the kind of people that we have kind of started to look at hiring, people who we start talking about being more relevant. That's also your question. I think there are, kind of discussions happening these days, even when we are trying to hire, it's not only the domain expertise that one kind of brings in, but how are you bringing in the various aspects, even in HR, the power impact of digital, the impact of AI in whatever you do, and how do you really translate that, like Elliot mentioned in terms of insights, etc. So I think one big change that's happening is between domain expertise to decision making and leveraging various tools that are available today and various opportunities that are available today. So we are trying to hear more of those, that is someone really doing that. The second element that hence comes is, what's the impact that you've been able to create now that you are approaching things in a slightly different way. So
Hmm.
is it, and what is the step change that you are being able to, see? So those are, the insights, the impact, the way one's looking at it. All of that, even in our conversations, the time of hiring is changing. The way we are writing the JDs now, to an extent, I would say, is changing. But a lot of emphasis on, when I see the senior leadership, the kind of people that, banks like ours started hiring are very different kind of people. Not that they're like GenAI experts or something like that, but people who essentially bring in a point of view, people who bring in insights, people who bring in all of those. So there's a change across levels, and I see there are some certain kind of leadership which was very command control oriented, or whatever you may in the past, are somehow also losing their relevance because collaboration is becoming exceptionally critical. And those are some of the other things that we're looking at when we're hiring people, because so much has changed. No one knows what's right, what's wrong.
Great. Thanks, Sharmistha. Rupankar?
Yeah, thanks, Anand. And I was just carefully listening to everyone, and I'm very curious to know how the AI is going to define the talent world, the talent market. Because if you ask me personally, I'm hearing artificial intelligence for last 20 years. So artificial intelligence is going to change the world, there will be paradigm shift and those kind of stuff. But probably it has got into an inflection point 4 or 5 years back, as Aprajita was mentioning. And God knows how it's going to take a turn. But one thing is very clear, the modus operandi of organizations are changing. The dynamics are changing, and people are willing to accept that there are this kind of tools, that AI tools or the data science tools, that's going to make a lot of changes in the organization. Whether organizations are ready or they are willing to take that chance, that's a different thing. But that uh, mindset change has already happened. Now there are a lot of things when it comes to at individual organizational level is going to change because of Gen AI or the robotic implementations, especially in the area where I work in the manufacturing field. So coming back to your point that does it have any impact when I'm hiring? I don't see any impact on the hiring, or do I see a talent differently when those changes are happening? No. The basics for hiring a talent or assessing a talent remains the same. So you have today, to an extent, organization also is looking at different skills rather than the traditional credentials like your college qualifications or your other experiences, probably getting little lowered in terms of the weightage what used to have earlier, and different skills are getting more and more. So it's becoming a skill-based world. So that way, the way you look at a talent when you hire, three things probably all of us look at, all of us who are here, I'm sure they would look at. One, the person, whether the person has the attitude to learn. Second, what kind of intellect or personality trait he has. And third aspect, what kind of motivation, aspiration that person has got. So those are the aspects probably getting more and more importance when you are hiring. And we focus from HR perspective to look at whether those traits are available as an individual. So basically, there is not much of change, but there's some kind of probably an change of weightage in terms of how much importance you give to your traditional credentials and how much weightage you are giving to the softer aspect or the personality traits what I just mentioned. And over a period of time, these traits will gain importance when you are hiring assessing. But one important aspect when you are talking about AI, what even Shailesh was also mentioning, and the data needs to be very, very clean. It's all data driven, right? So we deal with a lot of junk data. So until and the data integrity is available, I'm not sure how much AI tool would be able to give you the right kind of a decision making or the right kind of decision in order to have in order to bring better efficiency in the system. So that's my take.
Great, thanks, Rupankar. So let me just reframe this conversation based on some of the thoughts that came forth, right? There are three evolutions that have happened, if you look at broadly research. And Elliot, I need your attention. I guess you're little this thing. One is, we have tools which have brought in process efficiency. Yeah, Shailesh mentioned ATS, an application tracking system. It's basically an automation tool which actually brought in efficiency in how things are done. HRMS also was there at a point in time. Learning management systems came in. A lot of different tools were used. All of these brought efficiency, also increased reach, because they were online, digital, or internet driven. The second piece was when a lot of tools started evolving into intelligence-based tools, which through insights, right? Analytical tools like Power BI, Tableau. These are all tools that came in, which started adding on top of the layer of process, it started adding intelligence and insights for us to make decisions, right? So first layer, technical tools, process tools, which brought in efficiency and productivity. The second tools were intelligence-based tools, which gave you insights. All of this enabled efficiency and decision making. Now, the third revolution or change that is coming is AI. AI is a decision-making tool, right? It takes away, it is designed, or it is the construct of AI is intent behind it is the construct to take decision-making away from the human sphere, which means there is a process, there is data, which is giving us intelligence and insights, and AI will decide what is right, what is wrong, based on obviously parameters that a human being will set. You would say, this is the parameter I need, and here is how it will work. So imagine the example that Shailesh took, ATS, which does process. Added to that, you put in an analytic tool saying, okay, I can sieve data and I can pick the people who fit in my requirements in terms of skills and capabilities. And now comes behavior, Rupankar, the point that you talk, which are the softer aspects, the skills. And is a psychometric going to sit out there, which is doing a video interview of Anand Bhaskar or any one of us, look at our facial expressions, translate our words into text and convert our tonality into behavior patterns, and then do all the analytics around it, and then say, using, say, a disk or a psychometric tool of any kind, and say, here is Anand's profile, and is he the right fit for Siemens? Is he the right fit for uh, another company? And should he be hired for this job? Because is this the right capability, skill set that you need for the job? What happens? It just takes the human intervention away, brings in uniformity in hiring, brings in consistency in what you're bringing, removes human error, lots of things. So is this, I mean, this is the way at least people are projecting things to be moving. At least when I talk to a lot of clients, they're saying, okay, are there tools already out there that I can use? Can I deploy these tools at scale? Can I try it with my junior management teams? I don't want to do the senior management yet, but can I do it with the early entry level, next level? And one example I'm throwing out here is Hindustan Unilever and Unilever Worldwide, which has implemented a tool called HireView. Yeah, and they've done it as a case study out there in the open space, where the entire process of hiring for their entry level staff, which is management staff and officer cadre, is entirely automated, and there is no human intervention whatsoever, and this has been in place for the last 3 years. So is that, considering all that happening, what is your perspective in terms of way things could move, maybe a few years down the road, Aprajita, as you said, but do you see a tectonic shift happening somewhere, uh, you know, beneath the still water that we are seeing today?
Yeah, let
No,
me
I
let
think
me just.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rupankar. Go ahead.
No, I'm just want to mention, like you, uh, they probably there's no intervention of hiring and these things that might be working well with them. But to me, I look at AI for human rather than AI instead of human. So that one thing which I like to focus on as an individual, as an HR professional, to see that. So no way any intelligence, whether artificial or natural, which is coming instead of human, uh, should be able to replace the human. So that human touch, the human face of HR or the organization, not HR per se, for the entire organization, is very, very important. To an extent, certain part, as many of you are mentioning about that, it brings efficiency, probably bringing streamline more systems, brings more productivity in all the processes. But at the same time, I'm scared if we are looking at that, it's going to replace the human thing, then it's a little dangerous for me. Me as an individual, or all of us in this forum, would you like to attend this session if against in place of Anand Vaskar, a robot was kind of an anchoring the show? So a robot was anchoring the show, or like an artificial intelligence driven uh, uh, this thing anchor was there. So that's where the problem lies, and that's where we need to bring a balance between where AI stops and why human interaction starts. So that I just thought I'll probably bring that point over here and see what others say.
Thanks, Rupankar. Sorry, Aprajita, you wanted to go, and I'll
Yeah.
love to hear Shailesh's point of view after that.
So, where I was kind of getting there, I know there's going to be evolvement. There will be. I think with every new thing that's been introduced, right? I think we've just been forced to kind of understand that and obviously kind of implement that in some way that it actually makes your work more efficient, more productive, right? And faster, right? I think the intent is basically that. AI is obviously going to make things faster for sure, right? Uh, but I think I'm just kind of coming back to humans, as a community, or we are social beings, right? I think the one thing that we are struggling with the current generation is also the amount of um, mental well-being issues, right, that are coming up. Correct. I'm like, depression cases, bit and everything. That is the reason why, because they're so glued into technology, right? I don't think any one of us grew up in that kind of an era where technology was already, existing, right? I think a lot of us kind of saw it getting evolved and getting introduced in the society, right? And I don't think with AI, this is one aspect that can be resolved. And I'm saying it from context also when we saw COVID happening, right? With people even getting the comfort of home, working from home, right? That increased burnout, right? That actually increased limitation of human interactions, right? And that's why as a part of AI, that's actually going to be increased if we kind of just depend on AI 100%, right? But again, there has to be a hybrid connection. There has to be a combination. There has to be continued human intervention, right? Because when you communicate whatever AI is showing you, right, you communicate as a human, right? You interpret that what AI is telling you and actually kind of make sense of that as opposed to AI doing everything for you completely. As like then I think where we are from a startup culture, and again, I'm kind of going back to startup. If we, for example, hypothetically, we are like 1,000 startups right now, right? I'm like with AI, there could be billions of startups coming up, right? Because you don't need humans, you just need an AI tool doing everything for you, running your own business, right? Which in some fields I feel is okay to do when you, Anand, specifically when you kind of brought up creating reels, right? Content marketing, right? That's where I feel AI is perfect, right? Because you're doing everything online, right? You
Correct.
need the right tools and it's happening. But as opposed to when you're running organizations, right, where there are people that you're managing, right, where there is workforce, where there is empathy that's required. There are a lot of softer skills that are required. Machine is a machine, right? And like again, like I said, I was like, the prompt that you give, it's actually going to give you an output exactly on that, right? Nothing more,
Yeah.
nothing less.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You don't want to be talking to a chatbot and get coached by a chatbot, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah, good, good. Yeah, Shailesh?
So I agree with this that the future road is going to be a hybrid. There is going to be a combination, whether we like it or we don't like it. But from the talent or the career perspective, if you really want to look at it, so AI is booming, and maybe the previous the whatever transformation we have seen, it is not going to take maybe 20, 30 years, but next 5, 7 years, things are going to change. But looking at the scenario, like how human like adapt to a particular scenario, similar kind of things we are trying to build in AI, that it will start learning itself. Maybe tomorrow we can ask ChatGPT to write a code to create another ChatGPT. Yeah, so that kind of things can happen. But when the way Prajita and Rupankar said about the human connection, like sitting in 2020 when you were sitting at home, and earlier like we used to get walked with like too many people going to office and all that, and then people were actually, they were looking forward that when they can go to office and interact with people, that social connect. And if you like be it Satya Nadella or maybe Sundar Pichai, all these guys have emphasized on that the human connection, because our creativity comes with the social connect what we have, the thoughts we share. Now if AI, we think from a from the job market perspective, maybe entry level jobs or maybe digital marketing or those kind of things can get replaced when you can design something, and that will get adapted quickly. But if you just go up to the ladder, if you are looking at just take an example of a CFO. Now CFO can have the accounting and everything done by the AI, but when you want CFO to go in the market or maybe deal with the investors, doing the fundraising and all that, doing that kind of things through AI may not be that easy, or maybe investor may not believe on a AI, a chatbot is talking and the fundraising is happening. You need that convincing skill, those emotions, that passion, what you see, and then they will be they would love to pour money. So that kind of trust thing, or maybe those emotion and passion kind of a thing, that is what we can say that that kind of jobs might not get replaced. Entry level, obviously they are going to be there, but you need to see that how you will use it as a combination, not a complete replacement. So you have to evolve
Sure.
yourself so that the AI is evolving and you are managing with the speed.
Great. So I think what I'm hearing consistently is the hybrid approach, which is a combination, but love to hear what Elliot you'd like to say. Your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I think some really great points from the colleagues in the room. I take a slightly contrarian view. So I want to draw maybe a line between what you said earlier, the various technologies, visualization, data analytics, and so forth, Anand, with what AI really is at its core to me. So at its core to me, AI are essentially machines that have the capability to substitute for or enhance human cognitive functions, right? So whether that's reasoning, knowledge representation, planning, predicting, perceiving, learning, natural language processing, and so forth. So today, AI enhances all of these cognitive functions in domain-specific ways, right? So I want to build artwork or generate artwork, or I want to write a piece of text or story. But very shortly down the line, the combinatorial effects driven primarily by the revolution in transformer architecture, which we had in 2017, which basically enabled computers to break down human text or symbols into contextualized tokens and vectors, makes cross-domain and eventually meta-level artificial intelligence possible. So what you have is, on the one hand, you have domain AI going deeper and deeper, and then you also have it getting more meta. And when this starts to happen, you are typically embarking on the maturity curve of AGI, right? With Gen AI models like ChatGPT, we're already incipient on this curve. So let's play this out a little bit into the future in 3 years, 5 years, whatever that time horizon is. I don't think we humans are very good at predicting and prognosticating these things. particularly because there's such a huge information asymmetry. It was really happening in technology. But imagine you have, in whatever timeline from now, a highly empathetic, highly sentient artificial intelligence, and you have humans interacting with this AI en masse. Doesn't that raise the expectations of human beings themselves, right? If you're constantly or frequently interacting with a very empathetic being, are you going to start to expect that from others, other humans? And typically, because we as humans are using the opportunity to use our own empathy and sentience less and less, because that's being crowded out by these artificial sentient agents. What I suspect will happen is intergenerationally a preference for human-like interactions with sentient machines rather than with biologically humans. So my prognosis is actually a little bit grimmer than I think our colleagues here. I see AI as potentially, AGI in particular, as being able to fully replicate and replace human interactions. What does this mean for me, right? I mean, this sounds like I'm sounding, the death knell for human beings in the job market. But what I suspect this will lead to is fewer jobs, far fewer jobs of the kind we have today, including many, let's say, advanced white-collar cognitive jobs, planning and communications and so forth, and more jobs of the kind that manage, sustain, check, and calibrate AI and AGI models. And what these jobs are going to do is push the boundaries of human cognition across these domains, because AGI will operate across domains, but also metaphysically. So including with respect to ethics and governance, right? And typically then, just as the calculator did with our ability to do math, doing math won't be a function of how much arithmetic you know in your head, but how well you can understand the operations of the calculator and its inherent limitations, right? I think that's the parallel for me. So I see jobs developing in that way. I see AI and AGI developing in that way, and I see the human AI interaction developing in that way.
Great, thanks. Actually, very interesting perspective. And actually, when you look at it, whether we like it or not, I mean, I think for the short term, Aprajita and Rupankar and Shailesh, as you've said, there's likely to be a hybrid approach which will happen, because not because not because people who are working on AI want it. It's just that it is going to be necessary because AI has not matured. The technology is very nascent. There are a lot of tools that are not yet evolved. Even ChatGPT is not accurate. It's also dependent on the amount of data it's available to, right? So they're also releasing different versions. But going forward, the world is going to look very different in 10 years. I mean, and like you said, I mean, what happened in 40 years is going to happen in, say, 5 to 10 years now. So the cycle times are actually reducing quite significantly. Yeah. So, and you made a very interesting point. There are two aspects that I want to dwell into for the rest of the conversation. One is, what kind of mindset do people need to have? And I'm using the word mindset carefully. I'm not using the word skills. I'm not using the word competency. I'm not using the word attitude. What's the kind of mindset people will need to have when we look at talent that we are bringing into the organization, right? One of the mindset, as an example, could be continuous learning mindset, right? That could be one, right? As an example, I'm saying. And especially when you're looking at the senior most level, and then when you're looking at the level below, right? And I would focus the conversation on maybe the senior most level, because a lot of people who are going to be leaders are not going to be 21 years old unless it's a startup. They're going to be people who are in their mid 40s. And those are people who have not experienced any of this and probably are not as close to the change that's going to hit them. And they're already successful, and they're already general managers and directors and vice presidents and organizations. So what's the mindset that they will need to have to embrace this change? That's the first one. And the second piece, if we get time, we'll go to is, how is learning going to change? How is the learning landscape going to change? Yeah. So we'll start with, what mindset would we need to keep in mind when we're looking at senior talent? We'll go with Carmistha, and Elliot will come back to you. Your hand is still up. So I'll come back to you because Carmistha has not shared a perspective on the previous question.
Yeah, no, thank you, Anand. And it was really good to hear the perspective. So as the discussion was going on, I was thinking of the future of work project that I kind of led for Mahindra. That was way back in 2017. And then COVID hit us, 3 years down the line. So very interesting insights, which is kind of coming up today for discussion, as we can see, and it's a reality of the world. So one was that they said if technology adoption is slow, the world is going to adopt technology by 2050. But if there is some global event that happens, that could come up as early as 2035. But today we are actually possibly, thanks to COVID, it is around 2025 that we will be seeing a lot of technology and AI and related movements. But the other important, interesting, and why they talked about this was because it was very clear, this was a McKinsey research, that 60 million jobs could actually be cut the moment AI kind of takes over. 60 million jobs. And that's when they said it depends on governments, it depends on the social pressures, it depends on all of that. How much do you really want to go? So that was an insight, I think, and I was reading in the newspaper maybe just a couple of weeks back that government is saying we're going to go slightly slow with the AI. Coming to your question on senior leadership, and I mean, of course, you touched upon it, -3 up to that layer. There's a lot of confusion because all these are primarily operational leaders and they are essentially requiring to manage their day-to-day operation. It really depends on the top of the organization and the board, how quickly are you going to be pushing this change in the organization. And I have seen with my experience, very well-led boards are also very cautious about, changes in some of these areas, going full throttle and go whole hog. And kind of trying to create a balance. A part of it is because they don't understand the whole thing to be, and they're so good at decision making. Part of it is because they don't understand the whole thing and they can't take all the decisions. So they want to go a little slow because of that reason, right? Because a very clear mandate like a Siemens, if it's not there, then the -2s and -3s are pretty much happy doing their day-to-day job and figuring and worried actually, what does this mean for them? So I think organizations at the top, it's very, very important. Yes, we need to have leaders who are learning agile. We need to have leaders who are okay to be vulnerable and say, I don't know this and I don't mind learning it from someone much younger, or go out. Like we thought of, let's say, giving our CEOs and all, when even the digital transformation was happening 4-5 years back, give him a coach with whom he or she can talk very openly, saying, I have these questions, I don't understand. So being vulnerable, having learning agility, acknowledging that I don't know it all, those are some of the changes, at the top leadership level needs to come in. And then only you will be able to set a mandate. And then the senior to middle layers would be able to understand, okay, this is important. Either organization skills me, or I go ahead and get myself skilled. And then, like we heard in Siemens' case, that, people, if you are taking on these projects, are also standing out, maybe not all, maybe 20-30% of the talent would do that. That's good enough, maybe to start with. So those are some of the things that we could see and change, but it would really depend on top leaders. They want to see it, they want to partially see it, they want to wholly see it, and what they want to do about it.
Great. I think you picked a very interesting point in terms of, there's a lot of leaders at the top level are more operational in nature, and probably that's what has made them successful. And I can relate to that because as a part of what we do a lot of executive coaching and, leadership transition. When people move from a role to a big leadership role, we help them transition. And most of the coaching assignments are around leadership transitions and challenges with respect to mindset and shift in mindset, and many leaders are struggling with, okay, what does that mean? And what is it that I need to do? And how do I even know that I have the mindset or I don't have the mindset? So these are fundamental questions that one is trying to grapple and look for answers. Elliot, you had raised your hand a little while back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anand. So, your question was, what is the mindset? Or your first question was, what is the mindset that leaders need to bring into organizations to work with AI? And I'm reminded of a recent TED talk by Mustafa Suleyman. It's all over YouTube and the internet. He is a famous technologist that has worked with big FANG companies building AI models for the better part of the last 2 decades. So he's seen the evolution pretty much throughout. And what he says is quite interesting. He says we should be thinking about AI as a new species, essentially, that will exponentially stretch our cognitive possibilities, what I hearkened to earlier, but also our so-called action quotient, right? The ability to go from thought to program or input to impact at scale very quickly, accurately, and effectively. So if this is true, if we accept this proposition, I think 3 things are necessary underpin this mindset, and I call this mindset one of interspecies collaboration. Almost, I'm inventing a new term here, but indulge me if you will. So what are these 3 pillars? I think first and foremost, it's founded on a basic understanding of the way this new species thinks. And you don't need to be a deep learning technologist to know that, but you should have a basic understanding of the models, the neural actuator architecture, and so forth, right? Depending on what kind of AI you're working with, whether it's mechatronic, whether it's a large language model, or so forth. So that's the first pillar, basic understanding of the way this new species thinks. The second is understand its learning and cause-effect pattern context. What I mean by this is, all of this AI is forming neural connections based on data. And you hearkened a moment ago to the paucity of data, Anand, but I submit to you that with synthetic data, right, where we will essentially replicate data and proliferate it in exponential orders, this won't be a problem, right? Including, for instance, with designing simulated environments and testing AI in those environments. But this synthetic data, which is based on human data, which has all of its biases, including recency and so forth, is replete with our human biases, right? And we need to be mindful of that, of these biases in the learning and pattern forming context of this new species. That's the second point. And the third point that underpins this new mindset is the strengthening of our own human governance, including the ethics and morality that we've forgotten as a species. But if you go back to classical antiquity, those were the order of the day. That's what education was about, as well as institutions like law and organizational rules. So AI, the species, continues to be in the service of our species, human beings, and not of itself.
Interesting. Thanks. That's very interesting. So, any reactions to that, Aprajita or Shailesh, Rupankar?
No, I think, hearing Elliot, but in everything, obviously, I don't think a lot of people are evolved as much, right, to kind of even, have that much of an open mind, right? And I'm obviously talking about myself as well, right? Because with any change, we've also realized, and we know, and we might not accept it, but there is always resistance, right? And when Elliot talks about biasness, right, I think those are the biasness that you already set in your mind, right? If it has to come, if it has to be here, if there is value, there will be no choice, and you will have to kind of adapt to that, right? Like we've done with everything else, we've not had a choice, we have adapted as human species. I think we're very good at doing that. Even if resistance, we eventually find a way, right? Move forward. I'm like, there is a movement together. I'm like a herd mentality bit and everything. We do that eventually because everyone's doing that, right? And I know that's going to happen, right? But are we really open to that right now? No, because there are biasness. And I completely agree with what Elliot is also kind of saying. I think to kind of get to that level, there will have to be a lot of value that's seen. I think what's happening right now, AI has not reached that stage where there is value at right now. That's evident, not yet. Right? I think when it reaches that stage, I'm sure there is going to be an open mind, there is going to be learning, there is going to be acceptance, but maybe that's not there today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, great point. I think one of the important points that Elliot alluded to is governance. See, the third pillar of governance, wherein you have AI at the service of humanity, one species in the service of another species, as he used as a phrase, that's the important piece, and goes back to what Rupankar was trying to say, saying that, okay, if there is, at the end of the day, it's the human, it has to be the human being who actually calls the shots, right? That's a debate which is already opened up all across the world, in terms of how much control. And today I was just reading in the papers that Biden actually said that China and Russia both have to agree with us that AI will not control nuclear weapons. Okay, that is a treaty that they want to sign. Earlier, nobody is saying that we want to banish nuclear weapons. Look at the irony. But they're just saying that, okay, we won't let AI control nuclear weapons, right? And this is as early as this today's papers, newspapers and Times of India. So, I mean, I think all of us agree on that. I think in principle, all of us agree that it has to be the human being who makes the final call. The question is, you know, is this change inevitable, and how are we going to deal with it? I think that's where the conversation is not, we can't stop this change. It's going to happen around us all the time. Yeah, it's about how are we going to cope with it? How are people going to cope with it in organizations that we work? How is it going to redefine the way we are operating and looking at our jobs? And our people in our organizations are going to look at their jobs, whether at leadership levels, mid management, or junior levels, wherever. Yeah. Shailesh, any thoughts?
Yeah. So on this, I think it is like when Elliot was talking, it was like some sci-fi scary scenarios were coming in. So those kind of things are there. But the governance point, I completely agree with him. Similarly, when we see one thing is like looking at the way technology has changed. So every time a new technology change is happening, it always comes to like it is going to eat up the job market. So people will lose their job. But now, if we see the combination, what AI is going to bring in is that it is not like going to eat your job. It is just changing the way you are doing things. So basically, when you want to survive from that particular perspective, you need to see that how your survival is going to happen. And as Aprajita rightly said, that we as a human being, that we are very good at it. Like if you compare human being with any other species, I think we don't stand a chance. But still, we are doing it because of the adaptability what we are going to have, and we have shown it like all the time. So similar way, what I feel that rather than like considering AI as what Elliot said, that a different species and it is going to come and the conquer the human beings. Maybe we need to see that how we are going to gel with that, because the change is going to be there. It is constant. So how we will equip ourselves, how we will, you talked about the mindset. So first and most important thing is like how we will change our mindset. It will take time. Maybe the next 5 years, things may not change the way we are expecting right now. But this is the time where you will equip yourself, how you will skill yourself, start using the AI in a way that it will be a supporting hand to do a better job, to enhance the performance, rather than just thinking that you are competing against it. Because competition is not going to be a survival mode. And if you really want to go ahead and win this, then from that particular perspective, obviously you need to see the survival mode will come with how you will gel up with this and how you will manage this change in your favor, not in the AI's favor.
Yes, Fiona. Great. That's a great point. I think that's a good segue to, the last section of this conversation is, how important is continuous learning, continuous evolution. I mean, Aprajita used the word adaptability, right? One is I can adapt to change because it has hit me. I have no choice. So I just make peace with it. That is also change, adaptation to change. The other is like what Shailesh mentioned is, I prepare for it. I prepare proactively for it. I start thinking about it, saying, okay, how is it going to impact my life or my career or my job? And how do I stay relevant in being a step ahead versus a step behind, right? So in that space, if we have to look at, so how is what's the expectation shift that's going to happen in this space of continuous learning that we may have of our employees in the organization? So, Mr. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's actually No brainer, maybe, Anand. So yeah, I think continuous learning, I mean, even what we are seeing in the discussion today, I think continuous learning is really the order of the day. But what we also, there be sometimes we would do some kind of quick assessment and try to understand, but there are only about 20 to 30% of the people in the organization really focuses and learns continuously or chooses to learn continuously. So we did do this kind of a little bit of a quick assessment and a research a couple of years back, and with the people who are young and fairly agile. So I think continuous learning is here to stay. Earlier, we used to talk about learning every time, anywhere, everywhere, all the time, and all of those things. But continuous learning I really don't know what to say to that. It is like so obvious that you have to learn multiple things at one go. And like when you layered it, you said, the efficiency layer, then the, inciting layer, and now possibly the decision-making layer. Now, when these layers are changing, it's a layer. That means we are still catching up with maybe the other layers.
Right.
Right. And then a third layer has come in. So it's a continuous learning is also a lot of catch-up game that we are constantly doing. And let us also understand this change is not happening in one area.
Mm.
In every domain, in the domain itself, there are multiple changes. Right. In the way merger and acquisition has become so big today. So people have to deal with those changes also simultaneously or not get merged and acquired, right? A bank like ours, we also had an acquisition. So you have to plan that, manage that. So I think continuous learning, yeah, but I think everyone has to prioritize what to learn. And this possibly should, like the analyst talk report, become a quarterly affair for each one of us for our own survival. To say, what do I want to learn and must learn and acquire this quarter and next quarter and next quarter and next quarter. And I think learning functions and HR functions can support, but a lot of that would also come from the individual within. A lot of investment we'll have to make of time, of conversations. Also, organizations need to invite. One of the best ways I've seen people learn is when you get perspectives, like we are having here today. So that is also going to be a very important form of learning, not only just by reading books or taking up some courses, but is also creating conversation forums, immersion exercises, getting, experts to come and speak, allowing people to, merge with new realities, acknowledging, I think if you want to do continuous learning, you also have to acknowledge, leaders have to acknowledge that there's so much everyone's grappling with, and we understand and take the pressure and the fear away to the largest extent possible culturally. I think those are very important, because culturally, if we have fear and all of that for a day-to-day existence, then where will you do continuous learning?
Yep.
So the way you lead will have to change. So many things have to,
So I'll just, this actually all great points. I'll just shift before others respond, just shift this slightly and say continuous learning is like a motherhood statement, right? Nobody can disagree with that. But look at what is happening in in reality. Today, campuses have, you have thousands of students graduating, but companies have not gone to pick up those many students as much as they used to pick up over the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, the quantum of hiring has dropped significantly. One can argue it's a Ukraine war and this is happening in the US. US is going into elections, so they're not hiring. But the reality is different. The reality is a lot of jobs that used to come to India, to all the services organizations, are disappearing because those jobs are being done in a different way. Those jobs are no longer required. Infosys has not hired as much. Cognizant hasn't hired as much. All the big IT services companies which used to be swarming the job market are not hired. So there are a lot of people out there who are not, they are obviously qualified, but they don't have the skills to do any better. That's the big shift. The second shift I'm bringing, this is not entry level. Let's take the mid level and the senior level. I can tell you, we do a lot of CXO search and we hire a lot of senior talent for companies, right? You'd be surprised that I've never seen in the industry that many 40 plus, 45 plus aged people who are, I don't want to use the word in a condescending way, which is unemployed. And in many cases, not employable, because they don't have the mindset and they don't have the orientation to do the kind of jobs that people are looking at leaders to do in the future, right? These people, in other words, as they say, are maxed out or hit the glass ceiling or reached their the maximum of their potential. All these nice words we could use, but that's the one area where also there is a challenge, right? And the middle layer is obviously in a different space where they're saying that, okay, how can I stay in my job or stay relevant? And so there are no new jobs available for people to jump with 30-40% salary hikes that they used to be immediately after COVID, as an example, right? So there's a lot of shift that has happened in the last 12 to 18 months in the job market from what we are seeing, right? So in that context, continuous learning, continuous skilling, being relevant. I'm just phrasing the continuous learning in that context. Yeah. And Elliot, I think you raised your hand, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Anand, I cannot but agree with what Mr. Mista said a little bit earlier. Who can disagree with continuous learning, right? I mean, it's almost like, why is there even a debate about it? Are you even human if you're not continuously learning? But I take a little bit of a different view, and I'm reminded of something we learned back at XLRI, expectancy theory, right? All of us have learned this maybe in organizational behaviors. There's three parts, right? Expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. So the expectancy part is, will my efforts result in the desired performance level? Will the instrumentality part is, will a specific set of behaviors lead to certain outcomes or rewards? And the valence part is, what is the value or importance I place on certain outcomes or certain behaviors? I think the whole debate across industry with regards to continuous learning has focused on the valence part. So we've successfully raised the valence to continuous learning. But I think what we've missed, and maybe this is just me talking out of my hat, I think Carmistha will correct me, is expectancy and instrumentality. So for instance, with expectancy, what I see with the use of advanced tools, software, even if it's not AI tools, is the way that these are embraced, that these are incorporated into work, is fairly haphazard. It's fairly incidental. It's fairly organic. Very rarely is it really well planned. And maybe it's planned at a higher level, at the level of departments or even business units. But when you scale down and you look carefully at teams, it's not happening in a planned way. And why I say that is because if you don't have managers that are saying to their employees, in 3 months from now, your work is going to use this new skill set, and this job or this task will require this proficiency level in this new software, there is no visibility for the employee. Expectancy needs a ramp, right? And if there's no ramp because there's no planning, there's no systematic embrace of new technologies, new work systems, and so forth, expectancy fails. Instrumentality, on the other hand, are we actually telling people today that if they spend conscientious efforts on continuous learning, that they will be rewarded, potentially even just as much as achieving certain business targets? I don't see that encoded necessarily across incentive schemes, right? For me, instrumentality needs incentives, right? So expectancy needs a ramp, instrumentality needs incentives. They need to be encoded. And if you don't have that, you're missing two of the three pillars for the expectancy theory that continuous learning really demands, right? So that's my take on this.
Great, interesting points. Quick time check. We are, 11 minutes to closure. So, any responses to that? Probably keep it brief, and then we try to wrap up, leaving 5 minutes for quick learnings. Yeah.
Look,
Rupankar?
just I prefer to give examples from the real life. I was talking to a photographer, Gateway of India, Mumbai, there are a lot of photographers who take photos of these things. So I was talking to someone one of the winter evening. So he was a typist 10 years back in the Fort area in Mumbai. So now those roles are gone. He has taken a different role, photographer role in the Gateway of India. So earlier there was a role in bank called tailor. used to give the checks and they used to give us the money. So probably those roles have perished. But then a new bunch of roles have come.
Correct.
Typist roles or the steno roles might have been might have come as data entry operator, a different role. So it's a whether it's AI or it's non-AI, it's an evolution of human civilization. Over a period of time, few roles will perish and new roles will come. But until and unless you adapt, like what Shailesh was mentioning, you adapt to those requirements, you probably move towards move towards perishing. So that's the basis of continuous learning management or continuous learning. So whether it's an organization or in your personal space, if you're not willing to learn continuously, so that's an attitude or kind of a behavioral issue which probably create a roadblock in terms of your own personal development or even your professional development. More so in the professional development, even that would have an impact on the personal development also. So that point number one. Point number two, coming to AI, how this is going to probably change the ecosystem of learning. I think Carmistha can give a better idea. So what I feel, the conventional learning or the way used to see the career progression or the learning framework for an individual, we used to look at the conventional job title, how many years of experience he has, how much, what kind of qualification he has, what kind of performance rating, those kind of stuff. But then today with the use of data science or artificial intelligence tools, probably we can get into the lot of granular details in terms of his learning in non-formal ways or in different other spheres. So those data probably would be available with the, and so we can have better accurate curation of customization of learning requirement for an individual rather than generalizing learning requirement for a bunch of people. For a,
Sure.
so it going forward with the help of AI, there are a lot of individual specific curation of learning would happen. So that one role probably HR would have to play a very important role.
Yeah. So, which is personalized learning basically.
Yeah,
which is,
personalized
learning. Yeah.
Then because you get a better picture of the for the entire tenure of his professional life, you get more and more data points which can help you to understand what kind of learning or what kind of potential that person has. So it's going to how it's going to help an organization. So organization will have better tools or better kind of an avenues, opportunities or resources available in order to have proper fit when you talk about the talent marketplace or the internal mobility. So that's where I think there would be a change, a lot of change in the context of the learning management space.
Sure. Thanks, Rupankar. Last 1 minute, Shailesh, only 1 minute. I want to be respectful of closing time, as I said in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'll be very quick. What I want that when we are talking about the continuous learning, I think when we are doing the career progressions and those career progressions we map with the required learning, so that like you are at a X level and you want to reach to a Y, then how you will reach that kind of a career progression. So what I feel that the it is not only the responsibility of the organization, but the individual also start thinking that what type of career progression they want, what type of things are changing in the market, how they will ensure that they stay relevant. So what they are learning, how they are learning, and more important is that like what we have learned in IMA, that like whatever you are learning, how you are going to implement it and what output you're going to get out of it. So maybe organizations and also the individuals, they need to be vigilant about this particular parameter. Yeah,
Great point. So I think we are at 7:24. What we'll do is just probably take 30 seconds each. Any particular 2 takeaways or 3 takeaways that you may have from this, last 1.5 hour conversation that all of us have had. Anyone, Carmistha, you want to go first, or Aprajita, you've not spoken for a while, so would you like to go first?
Sure. I think just a couple of learnings, definitely. I think key takeaways as well is, I think just kind of very consciously trying to remove the biasness that kind of comes to AI, right? And again, I think from a startup perspective and everything, especially at the scale where these organizations are, right? And like we're hiring anyway a lot of younger generation, younger talent who's just kind of coming out. So at least I don't see the future of actually implementation and adaptation of this generation on AI is going to be tough, right? But I think this biasness and just kind of adapting to that as quickly as possible, yes, being prepared for that. So yeah.
Thanks, Aprajita. Rupankar, you want to go next? Key takeaways?
Yeah, that's a very interesting conversation. And of course, I need to brush up my knowledge on expectancy theory, which I learned 24, 25 years back. But Elliot was mentioning about, so it's an interesting point he raised. And yeah, so very interesting conversation. I got a lot of perspectives in terms of how things are going to change, different ways. What Elliot was mentioning on one way of looking at, then what others were mentioning. So it's a mixed kind of a feeling, but then there are a lot of takeaways in terms of how the world is going to change, especially the organization is going to change, and the HR as HR professionals, what kind of changes we need to bring it to ourselves in terms of getting sustained in this particular marketplace.
Great. Thanks. Sharmistha?
Yeah, thank you. The first takeaway is 1.5 hours just passed. How? So thank you. It's been a great team of panelists and moderator per se. So that's one of the takeaways out of the three. Anyways, there are three more as well. I said I definitely adaptability, focusing on that. AI as a species, I love that idea. It's going to stay there for a while, and also the human centricity would also be important and would continue. So it is like the coming together of many things. So thank you for this.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharmistha. Elliot? No new species now.
No new species. Though I'm just trying to collect my thoughts. Such a wonderful discussion here. I'd like to maybe sum up in 2 lines. I think the increasing embrace of AI in the workplace is inevitable. I think what we need to remember is that we should elevate collaboration for exponentially greater impact, survival, and human-centric outcomes. That would be my mantra.
Right. Thanks. Shailesh?
Yeah, so it was a lovely discussion. What I'll say that too many aspects we have touched for AI careers and how the future development is going to happen for the talent as well, how to maintain your career. What I will say that the adaptability, the continuous learning aspects, what we have discussed, and the important thing, what Anand has also discussed about the middle management and also about the senior management. One thing we need to see that when these things are happening, whether we like it or not, tomorrow or day after, it will become a race. And how we are going to say that you have to just have one objective that you need to stay relevant. So that is what my takeaway is.